Thabo Bester's partner in crime, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, took many by surprise when she's come out and challenged the legality of her arrest and repatriation from Tanzania. Now, in response, the Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi has outlined the processes that preceded her arrest, ultimately calling on her to take him to court. But did the South African delegation bend the rules, did they, in her arrest and subsequent repatriation? Let's find out. Let's get the thoughts, at least, of immigration lawyer Gary Eisenberg, a very, very well-known expert in this field. Gary, good morning. I appreciate your time joining us on ENCA this morning. And I'd like to just start, if we can, what do you make of Dr. Magudumana's application for her arrest to be deemed illegal? She's even gone as far, if I understand correctly, to say she was abducted as well. What do you make of this? Is there anything here?
Well, I now have had overnight opportunity to read her founding affidavit. It wasn't the benefit I had yesterday. But what she says in terms, very simply, is that with or without the concerted cooperation between South Africa and Tanzanian authorities, she was arrested by the South African Police Authority in Tanzania in early April, and she was driven to the airport, put on a plane, and abducted. That is her case. And she says that abduction is unlawful and that she's unlawfully before the court. Now, if those are the facts, and it's only her side of the story, I haven't read the answering papers of the respondents. I don't know what the minister is going to say in his joinder application. He wants to join the application as a respondent because he says he has a vested interest in the outcome of the proceedings. But if these are the facts, then an abduction is unlawful, and that's all there is to it. And if those are the facts that the court accepts as the matrix of facts in the matter that are uncontested, she is unlawfully before the court, and the court has no jurisdiction to try her.
And what happens in a case if that were to be found that the court here in South Africa has no jurisdiction? What happens in a case like this? Does she have to go back to Tanzania? Does this fall under Tanzania immigration law? Or is it a case of she simply walks free? What's the next step to your mind, Gary?
Well, then she walks free. She must be discharged. If the court has no jurisdiction to try her because she was brought before the court unlawfully, then all the proceedings from that point onwards would be tainted. Fruit of the poisonous tree kind of doctrine. She must be discharged. And that really is her case. But let's really see how it plays out in court. It's going to be an exciting hearing where all of these vested interests of various state departments are going to play out. And it's only after the fact, depending on what the court says. And of course, she's got the right of review to the High Court. So the party's not over until the fat lady sings. And it's going to be a very, very interesting hearing.
Yeah, the party has not even begun as yet. As you say, Gary, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I did listen to your interview yesterday, and I saw a lot of people responding to it on social media. I'm hoping you can just help us all understand, because those of us who aren't in the field of law, we all throw around words like repatriation, deportation, extradition. What does this actually fall under? I'm talking about the incident where Dr. Magudumana was arrested in Tanzania. She claims abducted, somehow ended up back in South Africa on an aircraft. What is this, to your understanding? Is it repatriation? Is it deportation? Is it extradition? And does it make a difference what kind it is?
Well, it does make a huge difference, especially to the question of whether the court has jurisdiction to try her in South Africa. Extradition is a very particular type of legal process. Between Tanzania and South Africa, we have an extradition agreement, the SADC protocol. Tanzania has its own extradition legislation, and so do we. And therefore, the protocol, and it's very important to note this publicly, if the Tanzanian authorities understand that she is to be tried in a South African court, and that is the whole aim of getting her back, then Tanzania and South Africa have the international legal obligation of starting the extradition process. And that extradition process is a concerted effort through these extradition proceedings in Tanzania, and she's got all the rights in the world to defend herself against extradition to South Africa. They protect her. So even if she has no right to be in Tanzania, and the extradition process ensued the way it was supposed to be, in my view, she would be protected by an extradition inquiry that would ensue judicially in Tanzania in terms of Tanzanian law, taking into consideration the provisions of the SADC protocol. That obligation to extradite, in my view, at this point in time, before the hearing in the South African judiciary, seems to have happened unlawfully. And that's the situation over now. With regard to a deportation, that's a unilateral act. She's found unlawfully in Tanzania, no other facts pertain, and the Tanzanian government, in terms, I think, of Section 14 of their own Immigration Act, has the right to arrest, incarcerate, and deport her, and the destination country would be irrelevant.
And so with it now possibly going to be ending up in court this morning, and this whole issue of whether or not there was an abduction in this, do you foresee any kind of questions around how South Africa's services would have gotten involved in this? Home Affairs, police, immigration experts and immigration authorities in their handling of this? Because that's what I'm hearing, that there could be an issue here, Gary, basically on process. That's what I'm hearing, where there could be a failure of process here. Is my understanding correct?
Gareth, I think your understanding is absolutely correct. The procedures and the process that was followed, due process, and the violation of due process in terms of papers filed by Dr. Nandipha is under a magnifying glass, and that's going to be the order of business, to examine it very, very closely and see whether it was followed precisely in terms of law.
Gary, I'm going to say thank you very, very much indeed for your time. You see, this is why I want to hear from Gary Eisenberg, one of the top immigration lawyers in the country, making sense for us as to what exactly could be playing out with this application by Dr. Magudumana, saying that her arrest and repatriation from Tanzania is illegal. As I mentioned at the start of our discussion, even going as far as to say she was abducted from Tanzania and brought back to South Africa. It's fascinating to follow when you start hearing repatriation, deportation, extradition, and how it all changes. But that's going to be playing out later today.